Hello, everybody. Today we are venting as artists completely uncensored. Welcome to Art Prof. We are a global community of artists dedicated to learning and artistic growth. For me, one of the things that I really need to vent about is just the constant hustle of being an artist is so exhausting to me because number one, it never ends. Number two, it always makes me feel like I'm begging on my hands and knees for things. And I'm 48. I sort of thought at this point in my life I wouldn't have to do that hustle anymore, but apparently it just never ends, no matter how many subscribers you have.
Yeah, that hustle. I can relate to that as well. I feel like I've been kind of in that mode since I was a teenager. And I'm 29 right now. So for me, it's kind of just been like, school, work, hustle with art, and then slowly the hustle with the art turned into school, turned into a job. But I still have that same kind of thing going on. Most of the time when it comes to jobs, it's not something that I really enjoy all that much. It's very rare that happens for anybody. And so it feels still like work more than just, oh, let's have happy fun drawing time. It really can weigh on you after a while.
I want to have happy fun drawing time.
Right, don't you?
Well, there's always a correlation between how much a job pays and how fun it is. And it's always the more fun it is, the less it pays. And the more a pain in the butt, the more it pays. And so I was asking myself, when is it going to start shifting? Mm-hmm. So the stuff I'm paid for is actually something I enjoy. Yeah. And people look at our channel and I can't believe we're at 202,000 subscribers. That just blows my mind. But a lot of people say to me, oh, you guys are all set, right? I'm like, no. In fact, if anything, we have to push harder. And I don't think a lot of people realize that about us.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, we're often in meetings discussing different strategies for how to stay afloat in certain months. I noticed some months are definitely better than others for us. And it is something that we have to constantly think about. I can't think of a single meeting that we've had over the last 6-7 years since I've been with Art Prof that has not been a question for us.
Staying afloat, making sure we still exist. And it makes me so exhausted to have to think about that all the time. And it just feels like I'm carrying this giant load on my shoulders where I just want to not lose money and not be bleeding cash all the time. And we're better than we used to be, but it just is never ending. So tell us in the chat, how many of you would like to vent about that hustle? I mean, what do you think it is about that hustle that's just so exhausting?
I think it's just that there's no real rest. I mean, as artists in general, we tend to want to work on something creative. And I don't think we ever take into account how exhausting that can be, whether it's for our creative project for ourselves or for other people. And so we tend to neglect and we don't take we don't take breaks as often as we should. We don't take rest days. We feel that our identity is so connected to what we do as artists that there's no disconnect mentally either. And so I think all that combined after a while can lead to that burnout feeling that we're often discussing.
By the way, welcome, Nikki, catching a live stream from Iowa. And let us know if you are here as a lurker. I love hearing from all of you lurkers. Just say hello. You don't have to do anything else. And good point from Anna. Turning 40 made me realize I don't want to run my career the way I've been running it. Yeah. And then you have to figure out a new hustle. And that's the thing that drives me crazy is that because we're always trying out so many different things. I mean, so much of making online content is just throwing spaghetti at the wall. But anytime I try some new initiative, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to prove myself again. And I have to show that I'm worth it. And just at this point, you're just like, oh my gosh, like, why is what I have already accomplished over the decades, why am I still begging on my hands and knees? And that part I feel is, I don't know, it's a little humiliating sometimes.
Yeah, it's being an artist can be very humbling. I could say there's very there's very few times where you feel that ecstatic joy where you're like winning an award or being fully recognized for what you do. Most of what we do is behind the scenes.
It is. And we work really hard to make sure that what we're doing stays afloat. And I'm working as hard as I can. But I think the thing about the hustle that also frustrates me is feeling like no matter how hard I work, I'm still hustling. And that makes me feel so inadequate in a way. And I keep saying, gosh, am I just terrible at running a business? Because, yeah, if you set up a business with free content, it's not a very good business deal. But I think from the beginning, that's been extremely important to us, is to have that accessibility. But the reality of keeping that going is extremely difficult. And I know for you, setting out your portfolio, I mean, that's another hustle. What's that been like for you lately?
Yeah, so I've been meaning to update my portfolio for maybe like the last year or so. And I got into a situation where I basically was like, you know what, I have to do this now. And it's been tough going through all my old work and going like, and looking through like 90% of what was in my portfolio is now unusable because I've gotten better, but where I've gotten better are in areas where I can't really show it because it has to do with things I just, for NDA reasons, I can't put on my website or something. And so I have to create a whole new look and fix all the old mistakes and just try new things. And that could be very, very daunting because, that could be 12 to 20 pieces right there that I have to figure out how to do very quickly. And that's a lot of brain power, especially when you're under pressure.
Alexandria says that exhausted feeling is why my day job, graphic design, is for a company, not freelance anymore. But I love and adore fine arts and illustration as my side gig and joy. Well, I'm glad that that has been the situation for you, because I do think for some people, when you compartmentalize, okay, that's my bread and butter job, this is the place that brings me joy, it is nice to separate those two things. But I think what makes things hard for me in terms of the hustle is it just never ends. Like, I wish I could have a week off, but I feel like if I took a week off from hustling, our YouTube channel would die. I mean, in July, I was trying to take a little bit of a step back because I realized I couldn't keep going like that. And the second I cut back on our posting, YouTube just went, and like that upsets me, like genuinely, that the second I get off the train, all of a sudden it's such a big dip, and that makes me nervous and feeling like, oh God, if I step back, the car is going to crash. I mean, I don't like living with that feeling.
Yeah, that's the thing about being an artist, is like you're never fully off that train. And like you said, the second you get off, and even for me, like if I take a break for a couple of days, I notice even for me, my skills just they look like they kind of drop a little bit. And it's like, dang, well, but you have to keep pedaling the bike. And I enjoy what I do, and I think I live a very charmed life as an artist. There's many people who want to be in my situation and are not able to for whatever reason. But then there are times where I'm like, even this good thing has its curses that comes with it.
Thank you so much, Tony, for your kind words. By the way, I never get tired of hearing those compliments. So bring them on anytime you want. And we have a comment from Sam. I'm 53, started late. No longer have energy for hustle. Many people describe an art career as more marketing job than artist. I post, attend few gatherings, improve my technique. 90% of what I do for Art Prof is marketing. And the percentage of the fun stuff is so small. And so you constantly feel like the hustle is 90% of your work, and the making gets shut down to this tiny percentage of what you do. And I resent that sometimes.
Yeah, I've noticed that when it comes to Instagram or YouTube or anything. I personally, I have a hard time just posting stuff for no particular reason other than I just either forget or I just don't feel like it, or just like, oh, whatever. But I'm always working in the background, and a lot of my issues when it comes to that is just the lack of posting stuff. Like the marketing side, I just don't have the same appreciation for, even though I know it's important. And so being able to take my mind and say, take it off the skill building side and put it into the marketing side, that's a whole other journey, I guess you could say. It can be very challenging for people.
Anna says, I guess I wonder if the hustle is even worth it anymore. The last year has changed so much for me that I'm really questioning whether my old goals are worth my sanity. Yes, that is a really tough situation to be in when you're just questioning what you're doing. I mean, that starts to get really discouraging to think about, oh my gosh, have I been barking up the wrong tree? Is all of this just not worth it? I mean, do you ever have those moments where you question things? I feel like I'm on a hamster wheel, so I can't really do it.
Oh yeah, I had that thought like 2 nights ago. I was so stressed out that I started clenching my jaw unconsciously, and I walked around the house later and I was like, why is my jaw hurt? And I realized I was like clenching down. I had to buy a mouth guard just for dealing with that for when I sleep. So yeah, it can get to that place where you're questioning constantly what the value of doing something is, and ultimately the only thing I can really do is go back to that original like child version of myself who wanted to be where I am now. That's one of the only things that can really get me through through those situations.
Janice says, this whole marketing thing is so incomprehensible to me, not to mention exhausting, trying to post to Instagram regularly, which I fail to do so often. Well, this is a whole other conversation, but I do think sometimes it's very difficult, as Anna said, to know what really is worth my time, what is actually going to get me results. And I find with social media, oftentimes people haven't defined what it is they're trying to get out of Instagram, because I usually advise people on different directions to go. And depending on who you're trying to reach, it's a completely different social media strategy. So that's also very, very confusing. We have a question from Tony. And by the way, everybody, I know you got something to vent about artistically, so put it into the chat so Jordan and I don't just feel like whiny bags, because I think that there's a lot of venting that has to happen. I was talking to Jordan today. I was like, actually, I need this treat. So Tony says, how do you get through the perfectionism? If my painting sucks, I'll just throw the damn canvas away. Well, you're not going to throw your canvas away, but you could delete.
Yeah. I think that's more of a mental thing, being a perfectionist. I don't think it has as much to do with what's on the page as being a perfectionist in life. Usually people who are perfectionists have a very particular way about going through things. They want things just done a certain way, and I think it is deeper. So when it comes to how that is in my art, I think having a time limit or having someone stop you before you get to that place is a good place to be. There's a certain point where you can call a piece done and just leave it. Then there's a point where you're just noodling and just trying to, make it better little by little. But realistically, part of what makes life so great is the little imperfections.
I also think oftentimes the reason people struggle with that is because they have really specific expectations. And so if you try to expand the expectations and say, well, I was initially trying to do this, maybe it veered off into a different direction. If I say to myself, the only guy I want to date on the planet is Hugh Jackman, yes, I'm going to be although he is single now. But if I just expand that pool a little bit and I'm like, well, Benedict Cumberbatch is available, that doubles my chances of getting a date. But that's the whole thing, is I think it's managing what you expect out of the work. All right. So Jordan, what's going on here?
So these are some style studies that I've been doing. I've been getting very bored lately with the work that I do. Not that I think my drawings are bad necessarily, but I've done it so much that I just get bored. So what I've decided to do is take some time to study another artist. This in particular is Sean Galloway. And I've been trying to take his style and then draw characters from a show that I like called The Chosen. So this is literally every cast member of the show, and their different looks. Some of them have different hairstyles. Some of them have, these big old beards. Some of them have big eyes. Some of them just have different shaped faces and stuff. So I've been trying to merge the two, just in order to, one, have some fun again, and two, hopefully discover some things that can influence my style later on. So that's kind of the goal of this.
Are you worried that your style is monotonous? Is that why you're trying this out?
I'm not even like worried about it so much. I just want something different. It's like eating the same meal every single day. Eventually you're going to get tired of it, even if it's your favorite food, right? If, like, I love pancakes, I make pancakes all the time, but there's occasionally a moment where I'm like, I don't feel like pancakes right now. So I'm trying to switch it up. I actually created a list of artists. There's like 20 or 25 of them on the list, where I want to do like 100 different head studies of each artist, just to add to my my artistic repertoire, if you will. This is another example of some characters that I was building from the same style. And it's not to say that I own the style or anything like that. It's just to do something different and to show people that I'm able to branch out. Because one thing about recruiters, if you don't show that you can do a certain style in your portfolio, they will assume you can't do it,
Yeah.
which makes sense and also doesn't make sense at the same time. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing this as well.
I don't feel like I'm that worried about style, but guys, I haven't painted in months. I mean, I did that annoying graphite putty piece of Wolverine on a live stream, but I don't feel like that counts because that's not my personal stuff. That was just like a demo on a live stream. And so I feel like I'm having the opposite problem, Jordan, where I'm like, who am I anymore? I'm not painting. And the thing is, I don't want to force myself to paint because that just makes me more miserable. And so I just have to sit around and hope, okay, someday I'm going to wake up and feel like doing stuff. But for me, that's a lot of art guilt, where I'm just teaching people stuff and going, who am I to tell people to keep making things? And I can't even do it myself. And I feel guilt over that, which is really frustrating. We also have some comments where was it? Oh, here we go. Lungia says, I think the marketing for artists is partially why they talk with third parties such as galleries. So the network would work for artists with them trying all the time. It's a nice thought. But guess what? That marketing to even get the gallery to talk to you, much less consider you for something, that is a major hustle. I mean, unless you're like married to the gallery owner or something like that. And so I just feel like you got to reach a person to get the thing you want who will put you in that situation. But God, finding that person is hard.
Yeah. Most of the advice I give my students is the importance of networking when it comes to getting jobs, because they're all at the end of the semester, especially once like week 13, 14, they're all like, how do I get a job? This is my last semester. And I'm like, be friends with everybody. Don't like, if you did something wrong to somebody, apologize and make it right, because you never know who's going to be in that position to hire you. The current job I have now is primarily because a friend of mine happened to work at the studio. So it just, that's usually how it happens. They want to know that you're trustworthy, that you are someone who can produce the work as well.
Remember, we are giving you full permission to vent about anything you want in the comments, because I don't like to complain. I don't like to whine about things because I think it gets tiresome for people to hear that, and it's not very productive. But we need this every now and then to just put it all out there, because if you contain that for too long, it can eat you up. And so I do think these conversations are important. One of the things I would like to vent about is some of our most complex involved tutorials where I'm, say, shooting on site, I'm bringing in a guest, and they're talking about an incredibly sophisticated process and materials. And a video like this could be 20 hours of editing. And that doesn't even count being on site and shooting, communicating with the artist. So this is a video I did with Andrew Raftery, my former professor at RISD, and his work. There's so much history and talk about materials. And this was one of those videos I had to put in all that time, because if I didn't, it would have misrepresented the work that he does. But then you post it and you're like, oh my God, it got 1,000 views. And it just hurts to put in so much work into something that just doesn't get a lot of traction. This video's done okay. It's gotten like 6,000 views. But then some dumb video I threw together that took 5 minutes will get so much. And so I don't know how to reconcile that.
You know, I think a lot of people struggle with that. Like so in my class last night, we ended up watching The Prince of Egypt for the latter half of it, just because there was no critiques or anything. It was free working class time. But the thing with that movie is everyone loves it pretty much, but based on the box office numbers, it didn't do well. Whereas the movie that they were kind of crapping on, which was Shrek. And I think they just said they're going to make a 5th one. So like for some, like the outcome was the opposite of what they were intending. And it's like, how do you deal with that? I guess you just sit and be surprised the whole time. I don't really know. I don't know if there's a solution for that at all, other than hopefully you just like what you're doing. But yeah.
I mean, I wish I could say that was enough to satisfy me. But this photogravure video, I just released the one of me and Ralph Robinson. Incredible printmaking technique that is obscure. And I was so excited to share that with people. And we released it and it got very few views. I also have a tutorial of him actually doing it step by step. And that is so complex, the actual process, that the editing becomes 10 times more work, because you have to make sure things actually make sense as he's explaining things. You got to add stuff to fill in the gaps and stuff like that. And so I guess when I have to deal with stuff like this, so much production time, so much work and effort working with the artist, it just makes you question, like, is that even worth it? I mean, that frustrates me.
Yeah. That's why I guess you have to go back to that original dream. Like, I'm doing this for this reason and not for financial gain or realistically, as artists, you need money to survive, but it's really hard sometimes to separate the two, because there's some things that are just out of your control. Like, we can't control how many views a video we post gets, and we don't buy our views or our followers or anything, especially. So we just kind of gotta hope that the algorithm likes us that day. And it's hard to put a lot of investment emotionally into something that you can't fully control.
Tiago says, I'm struggling a lot with visibility, not only online, at least here in Brazil. It feels that art, it's only abstract or conceptual art. Yeah, depending on where you live, there sometimes is just a big push for a particular type of work. Like, for example, here in Utah, the work that's very popular, it's all landscape based, which makes sense to me because Utah has amazing landscapes. But for that reason, I never really felt like I could connect with the local art community. It's just a very different place compared to being on the East Coast and stuff like that. And I think that's another thing we can vent about too, is visibility. And I think the thing that's hard is we spend so much time on our stuff and then we get crickets, and that's painful.
Mm-hmm. There's this trope, or this it's almost become a meme now, that the work in progress artwork always gets more love on Instagram than the finished artwork. It's kind of just a version of that, in my opinion.
Yeah, like Tiago says, I've been working on a solo exhibition about owls for the last 6 months, and it reaches so few people. I had that exact same experience. In 2014, I had 2 solo exhibitions that I worked like crazy on. And afterwards, I was like, oh, some of my friends came to the opening. That was it. I was hoping I would get a review in the newspaper, but that was it. And I just was like, why? And actually, that was the moment where I was like, I'm done. I'm not exhibiting anymore. So sometimes there's that. And Drusilla also reminds us it's often a good idea to check on your goals, not just about how high, but what to focus on. Have you had to do some of that?
Yeah. I had to remind myself, like with Shadowboxers, for example, that for those who don't know, it's my personal project turning into a webcomic, but it's moving a lot slower than I would like. But yeah, I do have to check myself because I have all these very lofty goals for it. I want it to be, on this level, but realistically, it starts with just making it. And sometimes it can get very discouraging when, what happens oftentimes, people go like, how's the project, how's the project, and I haven't worked on it in a week.
Yeah.
And the people who ask me are usually kids, and
It's
it's
not
like
done yet.
I don't want to disappoint them, but it's like they don't understand the concept of having to do literally 2 and 3 other jobs, which I have, and then trying to put this on the side. And like my personal life, my social life, I basically have none. Like I'm literally in this chair. Most of my, I would say most of my existence is in this chair. Like 90% of it, my awake time. So it can become very exhausting, very daunting, and also you feel a little guilty because you're like, oh, I'm not at the place I want to be. But again, it's like this is my project. I have to take care of it the way that I need to.
But also feeling like you do have a passion project, like this webcomic, like Shadowboxers, and then seeing, as we're going to look at in your schedule, Jordan, that
Yeah.
there's not as much time to dedicate to that. And that just feels so frustrating some
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. So for those who are, this is the first time I've ever shown this, but basically, I realized like there's so many things I want to do and no time to do it. So I had to create this very meticulous schedule where from 12 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. I had to be very specific about how I do things. I was like, I need exercise, I need food, I have to work. And I was like, I need to do career stuff, I need to work on Shadowboxers, I need to rest, I have a class to teach, like, and I have like therapy and stuff. So I was like, how do I put all of this into my life? And I was able to keep it up pretty well for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then but things change, right? There are times where a family member will call me up and need some help when I'm supposed to be doing my career development stuff. I'm like, sometimes dinner gets pushed late because I realize, oh, like there's certain things I didn't put in, like grocery store runs. Like I forgot to put that in. Like that's now merged into chores in my head. Or like what happens if I wake up half an hour late, or driving to the gym takes 20 minutes of my time. So like there's little things that I have to adjust and account for that are very, very tricky. But this schedule has helped me for sure.
Carolyn says, my struggle is finding the energy to make art when I actually have the time, or finding the time when I have the energy. I never seem to have both. Yeah, I mean, I have some days where I say, okay, I'm just going to get all the tedious work and get it done, and then I can focus my time on things. But then sometimes I'm so exhausted from all the administrative stuff that when I sit down, I'm like, oh, I don't want to work. But then if I start with the fun stuff, I do it for too long. And then by the end of the day, the administrative stuff has just piled up. And that stresses me out as well. So I think you're right, Carolyn, that finding that balance of, okay, what's actually healthy here and what can I actually manage is extremely difficult for a lot of people. Do you find that your energy level shifts a lot depending on what you're doing?
A lot of it is based on emotion. Like if I'm having a rough week, yeah, I will not want to get out of bed. Like I got out of bed maybe about 20 minutes before we were supposed to get on this because I was just exhausted. Part of that is because I had a class that runs till 10:30 at night on Mondays now. But yeah, if I'm not okay for some reason, then that will make my energy drain. It'll also make work take longer because I tend to produce my best work when I'm in a good mood, in a good place. Whereas if I'm frustrated about something, it'll take me longer. I'll stall.
Yeah.
I'll be like, that's not right. That's not right. So yeah, that all depends. Like this schedule I made is a very, it is based off of school schedules because I've spent so much time as a student that this is the best way for me to actually structure my days to have it laid out this specifically.
George says, hard to schedule at that level of detail. You plan and life throws you something you hadn't considered. Yeah, that's why I don't have the schedule because
Yeah.
my life gets so chaotic.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I had to consider that as I was making it. I was like, this would be the ideal version. Sort of like when we talk about drawing heads or drawing the figure, like there's ideal proportions, right? But then there are things that just happen that are different. So I try and be kind with myself and go like, hey, if I'm genuinely tired, maybe not getting up at 5 a.m. is a good idea. Maybe sleep, keeping that going till 6:30 and then adjusting my day. So it's not like if I don't do it exactly right that I'm going to get in trouble or I'm going to talk negatively to myself. This is purely for a reference point that helps me. Like what I realized by making the schedule, I got 14 hours of shadow boxers time just by making the schedule that I didn't know that I had. Yeah. So I didn't show this, but at the bottom of that sheet, I basically have how many hours makes up for this time total. And there's 14 hours of shadow boxers time I didn't know I had. So that's one of the reasons I also find that helpful.
Yeah, I don't have that schedule because I think a big part of it is I have kids and they're always doing things that I can't anticipate. So I do try to limit what I realistically think I can get done. And then if I finish a little earlier, fantastic. I think another vent that I have, and by the way, everybody get your venting into the chat. You have full permission to make that happen, is projects that are, number one, not practical. Number two, don't make a lot of money, but take a lot of money to actually do. And just knowing that I don't know how I'm ever going to get to this point where my travel show is actually going to become a thing, because I know what it takes to create an online presence and to put yourself out there. But I've got Art Prof to run. And some of you guys may have seen that I have pivoted my position a little bit, thinking to myself, well, maybe Art Prof becomes Clara's Art Adventures. Who knows where all of that lives? But the stuff I am most excited about right now is when I can take you guys on site and talk about things within that context and share parts of the world with you that you may not have access to. That said, those plane flights are not cheap. Travel's expensive. And so it's like you have a passion project, because I think sometimes that's hard for people. They don't really know what their passion project is, but not being able to do it, it hurts.
Yeah. I can imagine that would be such a struggle. Yeah, I don't have any travel really in my life like that. So I can't really speak to that, but I can see how that would become difficult to manage all that at once.
Yeah, and I've done some of it, and it's my absolute favorite thing in the whole world. It's just I don't get to do it very much. And I think that's the frustration for me, is knowing I have found this passion. I never anticipated this. I mean, when I was in art school, I was like, I'm going to be a figurative oil painter. And this is a whole other form of education that I never really thought about. So it really stimulates me and gets me super excited. But no, it's sort of like if you have a favorite food and they're like, you're only allowed to eat it twice a year. Like, that's just painful to me.
Yeah.
And we also have Katz, who says, I'm currently balancing making art, a day job, school, and time with friends and family. You know what I started doing? I haven't really shared this before, but I had a really rough winter where I was driving myself way, way too hard. And I was just grouchy all the time and miserable. I made everybody else in my life like that. And so recently I'm like, Clara, you're really going to take care of yourself. You're going to walk away from the work. You're going to go to the gym and do that. But it's exhausting to take care of yourself.
Yeah, that it's so tough. I mean, that's also, I mean, I see quite a few comments, you guys like, I can't handle a schedule like that. I can see why it's intimidating, but a lot of it started off by me actually putting in my essentials for taking care of myself. Like exercise, I put as like a non-negotiable category. My 9-to-5 work, I have to do that. As much as I don't want to sometimes. There's no way I can avoid that. I have to work on my personal stuff. There was a time for rest as well. So I put in those things first, because I know that if the machine's not running, the output is not gonna go so well either.
We also have Joe, who says, I've been sewing recently, but I feel bad when I spend a day sewing and don't draw, or vice versa. It's had a negative impact on trying to find my style and what people will know me for. Any tips? Oh, I feel that, because I have so many things I want to try. Last night, I was like, I'm going to burn stuff. I'm going to try more pyrography. And of course, I watched too much of The Walking Dead and was too tired afterwards. I mean, that's 100% my fault, but some evenings just happen that way. But what are the tips for the style, Jordan? Because I know a lot of artists are worried about that.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I don't know too many people who force a style out of themselves. A style usually comes from what you surround yourself with and what you like. So, like for example, as far as I know, children, their personalities are developed by the time they're like 7. A lot of that comes from their influence, right? Who their parents are, their family, who they spend time with, and all those things culminate to create a person. It's the same thing with art. If you are looking at certain types of artists, there's probably a reason why you like it. We tend to embed those things into our work. The more that you do that, and the more pieces or places you could take your ideas from, the more your own style will develop because you'll be combining your personal aesthetic with theirs. So that's how I personally do it. I don't even really pay it much attention. I just kind of let it come out.
Yeah, Nacho says the same thing, struggling with the idea of, quote, my own voice. And I think for a lot of people, it's stressful because you see other artists out there with established styles, established audience, and you just think, oh my God, I'm never going to get there. And so what's helped me is to say, what do I have to do today? Because I can stress all day about like, well, we have 202 subs, but this other channel has 3 million and it just feels so far away. And I know how we got here. It was just one foot in front of the other for a really long time and having that resilience to do things and have absolutely no one care. That has happened to me all the time. And we also have a comment about the visibility. Janice says, so glad to hear others struggle with no engagement. And yeah, Anna Weeder, it's like, how are they doing it, these bad artists? Yeah, that was a follow-up from something Anna said earlier. I went to art fairs, the Armory fairs this weekend. There was so much terrible art. One of the most promoted paintings was one of the worst paintings I've ever seen. That frustrates me too, where I see people giving some really terrible advice and their stuff is all over the place.
Yeah, there were times where finishing up school, there was a particular classmate I had who got a job almost instantly, but me and our teachers and my classmates, we all kind of discussed it behind closed doors, and we're like, we don't know how this person got work. Like they're not good at all. And even the personality is kind of one of those that is not super agreeable.
Yeah.
And so we're like, how did you find work? Like it's actually something I'm still not sure about. But something I've been realizing is that there are certain things that happen to people for reasons that we cannot understand or control, and it just is what it is. Some terrible things happen to great people, and some terrible people have great things happen to them. It's just, I'm not saying that we're judging these artists by their moral and ethics and stuff, but that happens sometimes.
I mean, there's a couple out there that have questionable morals. And that also frustrates me too, because I'm like, they're spreading stuff which is actually quite toxic, but people are listening to them. And that frustrates me as well. Here is a good comment from Sam. Answer to many questions and stressors is to ask yourself, is this something within my control? If not, then it's wasted energy. Well, that is something I'm very appreciative about YouTube, is that we didn't have to wait for anyone's approval. We just started a channel, started making things. And in academia, I just hated that I was begging people to validate me. I mean, that was truly exhausting. So I am very grateful that we have this particular forum to do that. Yeah, Gavin says balancing public school job, which is so much work. Oh my gosh, an MFA family head above water at times. Yeah, I think, okay, so there's two things going on for me, Jordan. Number one, I don't handle stress well. And so I try to anticipate places in my life that could be stressful. And so I try to set things up so it's maybe a little bit less. But then when it like happens to me, I can't deal. Like I get super overwhelmed. And I think that's perhaps what a lot of artists are feeling, is just overwhelmed with all these things.
Yeah, I mean, like we said at the beginning, a lot of reason us artists even become artists is because there's a joy in creating something that we like, whether it's painting, drawing, sculpting, sewing, whatever it is. We just enjoy that. But when real life hits and when there's things that that make up our life, like family, like bills, like school, like debt, I think it adds to it, especially because, like I mentioned before, so much of what we do as artists is connected to who we are. And so it feels like if we're not succeeding, then I think we feel worse about ourselves typically. And if that cycle continues to go the way that it's going, then it's just a negative situation. I think that's how you get the burnout. That's how you get the frustration overall. There's very few people who are doing more, I guess, analytical jobs that I find connect their work with who they are as a person. And they seem to be able to kind of break out these things much easier.
Absolutely. Please think about our workshops. We do have 2 coming up, one on fall landscapes and another one on mini sculptures. This is a 2-week workshop. You have the chance to work with me for 2 weeks, written support, comprehensive critiques in the Discord, and there is also a 3-hour live session. So information on that is on the front page of our website and also in the video description below. Reminder, everybody, we have this giveaway in the Discord, our Open Studios Club, which is a super chill hangout on Voice. People come, they work on their personal projects. We do a lot of venting there as well, but we also try to keep things positive. But we do offer 1 free session for all Discord members. So if you would like to do your free session, just tag me in general chat in Discord and I will get you set up. Please join us afterwards this live stream. We are going to be doing a Discord chat, so you guys can meet me in the post live streams channel where we can continue to vent or talk about pizza, whatever it is. Thank you so much to our incredible top Patreon supporters. I mean, you guys, wow, you've taken away about 50% of my hustle because you're here supporting us. So I am so incredibly grateful to have your support so we can stay afloat. Visit artprof.org. There's tons of content on there that's not on YouTube. Use the search bar. Art Prof is a podcast. It's available on Spotify and iTunes. And Buddy would like you to subscribe for our global art community. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.